So here we are, and I'm Dave Sturm from Bracker's, and today we're going to go over how to light up and fire a Geil gas kiln. So come on in. So this is our kiln. We're working with a DLB24 with the basic controls on it, which is really, it's a manual control with an automatic temperature shutoff is what we're working with here. So one of the first things we want to do before we turn this thing on, we're going to walk back here, and I want to make sure that our damper is open. Labels are in here, and this little plate right here is set to make sure that we can't close it all the way during the firing. You'll close it all the way when it's cooling down. But when we're lighting it up, the last thing we want to do is collect a bunch of gas in here that doesn't explode. So we leave this all the way open for safety. Next thing we do, we walk all the way to the front.
We can just pull that out of the way.
You're right there. All we're going to do is crack the door open. Okay. And we do this for the same reason. So we've got a lot of oxygen going in here so that we're not trapping gas during the light up. In case there's a failure of ignition, we don't have a bomb going on. You'll notice in here that the cone packs are set at certain heights. And she's done whatever he has to do to get those cone packs up so that during the firing, it's directly in line with your spy holes so that you'll be able to see them when you fire. Because that's going to be how you really know how to shut the kiln off and when it's time, or when to start reduction, that sort of thing. So here we are, we're going to crack this open like this, which is good to go. Now we're going to walk back here, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at what we've got going on. First thing we're going to do is follow our main gas line in, and we're going to make sure that the ball cock is in line with the pipe so that the gas is on. So now we know we've got gas coming to the unit. The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to turn my main on, and I'm going to hold the reset button for about 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now this has come on. And what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing what is the current temperature inside the kiln, and what is the temperature the kiln is set to shut off at. I can change this value by going up and down. Okay, so I can change this to 2350, I can change it to 2360, I can drop it down to cone 1. All the information over what your shutoff temperature should be is on the Orton chart for cone equivalency, which we've got a copy of right here. So we can follow our cone down and tell what cone we're firing to, follow it over to the large cones if I'm using large cones in my cone pack, or if I'm using self-supporting cones on the shelf, I use the self-supporting cones. We use the regular column, and typically we shoot for the 108 line. If we're firing faster, then we need to shoot for the 270 line. Most information on how to read this can be found at ortonceramics.com, the Edward Orton Junior Ceramic Foundation, ortonceramic.com. So, we set our shutoff temperature to where we want it to be, and the first thing we have to do is we have to light our pilots. So we come down, we make sure that our main burner gas cock is off. So perpendicular to the gas line is off. So we're good there, so we can go ahead and turn our pilot light on so that we can get ready for the burner. To turn the pilot light on, I'm going to push and hold this button, much like when I'm lighting a hot water heater. And we're going to hang on. I can hear it starting. Now I know that the pilot is lit and it is proven through the thermocouple, so I can let go. So now I've got a burner bar going here, and I'll go ahead and open this up so you can see it. You don't have to do this, but I'll open it so that you can see what's going on. During a firing, you actually want to leave these closed so that you don't have a gust of wind go through here and actually blow out your pilot bar. But under here, you can see the 4 burners on this side. You can see the carryover bar here is lit, and it's lit all the way around where it's touching a thermocouple on the far side. If the flame pulls away from the thermocouple on the far side, the system will go into a failure mode and it will shut down. Shut off main burners and it will try to relight the burner bar. If it cannot relight the ignition bar, then the whole system goes into failure mode and it shuts off as a safety device to keep you from having a whole lot of raw gas running through your building. So it's an important safety. So I'll put this up just for a second. So now that we've got our pilot lit, we can go ahead and turn on our gas. I have our system here set to high limit instead of soak, because all I'm going to do is I'm going to fire the kiln manually, and I want it to shut off at that temperature. So to turn gas on, I come down here and I'm watching my gauge, and this is in inches of water column. There are different units of measurement. We're using inches of water column on this unit. And I'm going to turn this on ever so slightly, and I'm going to listen to those burners engage. And I don't need it on very much, because the next thing I have to do is I have to go and visually look. Now, I'm not sticking my head in here. That'd be a mistake. But you can look and see your burners going, okay? Even when there's work in there, you'll be able to see sort of the burners. And they're doing the same thing on this side, and I can see that sort of from where I'm at, but because of this cart, I don't think we can get the camera in. Once you know that that's lit up in the way you need it to be, now you close this, because we know we're not pumping raw gas into the unit. Tighten them down. You do not need to torque these down tight. They just need to be, it needs to be snug, because when this system fires, everything needs to expand, okay? And if I really crank these things down, I'm gonna crack the brick of the door. So get them tight, but don't wrench them down. So we're good to go there. And now we are technically firing, okay? I've got a nice small amount of water column going here. It's about a ½ inch.
Now, in terms of the water column,
yes.
Can you explain or elaborate a little more? Do I need to adjust that during the course of the
firing? You will be turning that up as you fire. So periodically you're going to turn it up. Your maximum pressure here is about 5 inches of water column, okay? 5 inches of water column, and it's going to seep up just a little bit here, okay? That's with the burners full on, okay? 5 inches of water column is enough to get you where you need to go.
And what time is that done during the firing?
You're going to get that high towards the end of the firing, okay? 3 to 4 inches of water column on a kiln this size is enough to get you to cone 10 oxidation. When you start reducing, which is a very inefficient form of firing, but it's what we use to do what we need, that's when you start bleeding a lot of gas to get the effects that we're looking for. But when you start, you're starting way down here at this small little, amount of water column. You will also, during the course of the firing, adjust the damper position, okay? Once we're lit, I'm open at full right now, okay? When I start my firing in earnest, I might have this at a 5. I might have it at a 4. A lot of that depends on what's the barometric pressure that day, because that's going to determine how well is your hood pulling. Even though it's powered, how well is your hood pulling? How well are things drafting through the kiln? What's the barometric pressure in the building? That's going to have so much of an impact on what's going on. What you need to remember is, what do the flame colors look like, okay? And an oxidizing flame is that wonderful blue, bushy flame, right? A neutral flame is sort of a slow, licking, yellowish orange flame, okay? And then you've got the reduction flame, neutral can go a little greenish. Reduction flame is very lazy, but it doesn't necessarily have smoke coming out of the end of it, okay? If you're depositing a lot of carbon, you're using way too much gas. You don't have to use that much. You don't have to reduce that hard unless you're trying to do carbon trapping blazes, at which point you need that carbon. Otherwise, you're just wasting gas. It's a lot more efficient to start your reduction a little earlier and do a little lighter reduction for a longer period of time. You'll achieve the same results without blowing so much gas out the chimney.
And so with reducing in the damper,
Yes.
so by opening the damper, you're reducing, or by closing the
By
damper?
closing the damper, because what we have on the kiln is you have two ways to control it on this kiln because it's a natural updraft kiln. I can restrict the flow through the chimney by closing the damper, okay? When I do that, what that does is it takes all of the gas that goes in here and explodes and becomes a non-combustible gas, right? Carbon monoxide, which then grabs oxygen molecules from everything it can, that's reduction, to become carbon dioxide, which is inert, okay? And it hangs out more in the kiln for a longer period of time because I've closed this down, okay? So the longer that hangs out in the kiln, the less oxygen that's in the kiln for the gas to come in and combust with, okay? So I can create that way, but that's not the only key. Because if I close this down too much, I can starve the kiln off. We can end up having no oxygen in the kiln, or not enough to do what we need to do, because we still need to climb in temperature. And the only way to climb in temperature is to have gas exploding in the kiln. You know, we don't want the gas exploding out of the kiln, and we don't want, and you find this mostly in like wood fire, where they go for a very long flame, they'll end up with a lot of fire shooting out the top of the chimney because the flame's gone so long looking for oxygen. It's searching for it, and it actually has to leave the kiln to find it in certain cases. We don't want that either. So it's a balance. So I'm going to close this and move this a little bit at a time, and I'm going to turn this up and down a little bit at a time as well. Because the other way you control it is how much gas is actually going into the burners. All right? So by increasing the amount of gas that goes into the burners, I'm increasing the potential BTU output of each burner. Okay? So I've got more gas coming through here, and I've got more gas that can explode because it's coming through faster and more volume. More gas that can explode means that I can rise at a higher rate. If I rise at a higher rate and start off my exit flue too much, that's when we run into, oh God, I've stalled the kiln. And if you were to actually pull this open, you'd see gas sort of burning on the bottom of the kiln. And if you pull out a spy hole, you'd have flames shooting all the way out here. Because you filled your box full of gas that can't blow up, no matter how much energy is there, because there's no oxygen. So it's a balancing act. You've got to find a balance for it. What we always say when it comes to these kilns is small adjustments and wait, because a box this big takes a while to balance.
So can you give us like an approximate, when you say and wait an hour per adjustment, is there?
If I make an adjustment, I'm going to go away for at least 15 minutes. Make an adjustment, walk away. Let the kiln balance, and then come back and see if what you did is what you're looking for. If not, adjust it some more. You know that as you fire the kiln up, you're going to be turning the gas up gradually. More and more and more and more and more. When you go into reduction, you might turn it down a little bit.
So now when you say a little bit, how much of a water column at a time to adjust? Is there a rule?
The rules really depend on how much work's in the kiln.
I see.
So, because the harder stacked the kiln is, you want the flame to go throughout the entire work there. So I actually, when the kiln is stacked fuller, I try to fire slower.
Because I will be packing the kiln, that's
right. Yeah, and you should be, because downdraft kilns like that. They like to be full.
So assuming it's packed, what would you recommend in terms of adjustment time?
Adjustment times, I would start, and we'll get to candling in a second. But you come in the morning, you're actually not going to be starting at room temperature. Like I said, I'll get to candling in a minute. You're going to come in, you're going to turn on a ½ inch of water column, and you're going to leave it there for probably an hour. And what you're doing at that point in time is you're driving off whatever residual water might be still laying around. Okay, it will likely be gone after an overnight candle. Okay, but you're just making sure you got there. Okay, then you're going to come back in, and I would turn it up to one or 1.5, and let it stay there for a few hours. You know, your range goes up to 5, so you don't have to go up very far, and 3 is really as high as I need to go. What you want to watch is how fast are you going through quartz inversion, which is anywhere from Oh, good Lord. The thermocouple output will be anywhere from 850 to roughly 1100 because the work isn't actually that temperature, but in there the work hits quartz inversion. You want to go slowly through that, both up and down. These kilns are insulated well enough that it will be fine all the way down. You don't have to worry about it. But on the way up, you want to sort of go slowly until you hit about 1100, and then you can really sort of kick it in the pants. Now, there's two things you have to watch though. There's body reduction. Okay, body reduction you do around cone 08 to 010 in that range. I try to err on the side of 010 is when you're going to do body reduction. If we watch our chart here, 010 is going to happen 1648 roughly. So remember that there's something in about 1600 Fahrenheit that I'm going to have to do. Okay, so you bring it up to about 1100, and then you can kick it in the pants a little more. And when you make your adjustments, adjust by a quarter-inch of water column, and then walk away. Walk away and see if it's doing what you need to do. As you climb in temperature, you may need to open your damper a little bit because you've got it starved too much. So if you turn up the gas and you notice this is going down instead of up, you've got it starved off too much. Open it up a little bit to let a little more of the gas out. Because I don't want to reduce yet. I want to stay nice and oxidizing. Okay. Once you hit the 010 mark, it's time to do body reduction. Okay. To put it into body reduction at 010, half the time all you've got to do is close this ½ inch. Somewhere between a ½ inch and an inch. And wait. If you've got this balanced properly, the kiln will go into reduction. How do I know I'm in reduction? Put on your safety goggles, put on your gloves, because these are hot. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a peephole, not like this, because I don't want any fire shooting me in the face, right? I'm going to stand at the side, I'm going to pull it open like this, so that it's angling sort of away from me, so that any fire that's going to come out here is going to pulp like that, and I'm going to see it.
That's really important to know.
So just sort of, like this. And you may have to turn a light off earlier in the firing, but usually not. A reduction flame might shoot out about that far. Okay? But more importantly, if I look in the hole, the atmosphere is going to be hazy. Okay? So the air in there is going to be hazy. I'm not going to have a nice and clear as a bell, and it's not going to be sooty, so I'm not going to see black everywhere. A nice hazy atmosphere, fire shooting about that far out there, that's reduction. Okay, and that's all the reduction you need. So if you start at a cone at about 010, and if you build your cone packs, if you've got 010s in there, 010s and 08s, you'll know when to start it and when to stop it. If you don't put those cone packs in there, follow the chart as far as temperatures are concerned. Okay? So and you're going to leave it in that reduction, a really light reduction until about 08. Okay? You're reducing the body. That's when you're reducing the clay itself. Okay? The glazes, most of them haven't started melting yet if you're doing cone 10, so you're not really messing with those at that point in time. Okay? Once you hit 08, we're going to pull it out of reduction. Okay? But I don't want to oxidize the kiln because I don't want to undo what I just did. Okay? To pull it out of reduction, at that point in time, I'm going to need to turn my gas up a little bit too, because that's about when you're going to turn gas up. So that's got to get turned up, but I have to open my damper a little bit too. What I'm looking for, okay, is I'm looking for the chamber to not necessarily clear, okay? It'll clear a little bit, so it won't be as hazy, but I don't want it necessarily as clear as a bellow. But my back pressure, top and bottom, the flame, if it comes out of here at all, is just a little tiny bit, okay? What I don't want are these slide holes sucking air in, okay? But I want a little tiny bit of fire coming out of here. You'll see it, it looks like the end of a lighter, that sort of thing. That's perfect, okay? Now I'm neutral, and I want to maintain that neutral atmosphere all the way up to about a cone and a half from my shutoff. Okay, so if I'm firing to cone 10, somewhere between cone 8.5 and 9, I'm ready to reduce for glaze. If I'm firing to cone 6, I'm ready to reduce somewhere between cone 4.5 and 5. What are those temperatures? Well, if you don't have the cone packs set in your kiln for those, use your temperatures on your chart, and you'll know when to go ahead and go into reduction. So you're turning your gas up, you're dampering in, you're moving the dampers and gas the way that you need to balance this kiln, maintain your atmosphere, and climb in temperature until you hit those values. Once you're ready to go into reduction, you put it back into reduction, which again, I need to hear, no soot thrown around all over the place, nice hazy atmosphere, and you fire it in reduction. I still have to have my temperature climbing, so I can't freeze the kiln. Still have that temperature climbing until my final cone has bent to 4 o'clock. So when you're looking at your cone, it's going to bend to the tip at about 4 o'clock. I actually stop it at about 3, because once you shut it off, there's still some carryover, it'll continue. So then it's time to shut your kiln down. But unless you're doing carbon trap glazes, most of your reduction glazes will benefit from clearing the kiln before you shut it down, because it'll brighten them up, your colors, so they're not so muddy. Okay? So what you'll do right before shut off, your cone is there, you want to go ahead and take the kiln out of reduction, let that atmosphere in there clear up. Once the atmosphere clears, shut it down and seal it. Because I don't necessarily want to drop in temperature, and I don't want to undo everything that I did reducing the glazes. I just want the atmosphere in there to not be reducing when I shut it off. So when it's time to shut it off, spy holes are all in, this is sealed up like it's been the entire time. At that point in time, the first thing I do, turn off the gas. Then I come to the damper, and I close it all the way into the closed position. Now the kiln is sealed up, my gas is turned off. I can go ahead and turn my mains off if I want to, but I don't have to. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and do it though. I'm going to let it stay off for just a second to show you what it's going to look like if you need to come back to it. With the mains off, the solenoids are shut down. Gas cannot come in, period. So if I need to check temperature, you can always come back in, turn your mains back on, press your reset button. There you go. My pilot is not on, so the gas cocks are off. Gas can't come through, but I can still tell what the temperature is inside the kiln just by looking at my dial. I can't have Kid come through here and start messing with this and turn gas on, because there's no gas going in the garbage right now.
So now tell me, Dave, how many hours, if this kiln is packed, should I estimate to get up to, say, 900, to take my time to get there so that I don't cause any breakage?
To get to 900?
Yes.
900 degrees after you candle. When you come in after candle, it's going to be, depending on the pack, anywhere between 200 and 500 in that kiln. Okay, so that's what you'll start your day at. To get to 900 degrees, I think you'll probably be there in 3.5 hours, about.
So it's much more efficient than the electric kiln.
Yeah. And a lot of that's because we're going to heat up most of this mass through candling it. We're going to balance that mass, and that's how we're going to get there.
Candling should take place overnight, and that's just candling again. It's turning
Pilots.
on pilot, and
Pilots
that's it.
only.
And
do not turn this on, just the pilot. So to candle overnight, I've got the kiln done. My damper is open when I light my pilots. Okay, that's important. Damper's open when you light your pilots. When it's time to go home, put your stop in there, close it down too. This is not closed, it's still open, but it's gonna trap heat, which is what I want it to do. It's gonna allow water vapor to leave, but it's gonna trap heat. Turn my pilots on. Go home. I am not firing. I am not firing. There is no definition of what's happening here that I am firing. Therefore, you are not violating code. Because you cannot fire overnight. You can't leave a firing kiln unattended. I'm not firing. I'm not firing. I'm candling. They are distinctively different things, both in reality and legally. They're distinctly different. So, I can go home. This is going to drive off moisture. It's going to preheat this kiln so that I have a snowball's chance of going home on time tomorrow. And it's going to make my day a lot more enjoyable.
So, let me, to be clear, so the pilot is on.
Yep.
And the pilot is really candling.
Yep.
And when I'm candling, do I have to have this door open or no?
I want that closed.
So it's closed, and
Close
the
it up.
peepholes are closed as well.
You bet.
And
Damper is the damper stop in it so that it can't close all the way. Because right now the damper stop is set. So again, this is my damper stop is set so that I've got a 2-inch gap in here. So that it's not closed all the way. So that everything I'm combusting, the gases can leave the kiln like it's supposed to. Okay? That's candling.
And if I have a cone or a kiln that's packed, will one night candling do the trick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
One night of candling will get you there. And as long as your main burners aren't on, and honestly, if you're leaving at say 4, I know, if you're leaving at 4, by the time you roll the next morning, it's perfect.
And then I can just start it up and go through the process.
Exactly. And candling this overnight uses less gas than a water heater.
Oh, wow.
So you're not burning a lot of energy doing this.
That sounds great. I think this really helps tremendously. And you know, I have a feeling we're going to have to stop this video in a moment here. Is there anything you'd like to add that you think should be, for posterity's sake?
For posterity's sake? I think that gas kilns are a very important part of the curriculum at the high school level because of what you can do with them when you're teaching reduction, when you're teaching atmospheric. This tool allows us to bring in things to the arts like chemistry and thermodynamics and those sort of hard sciences that everybody's really looking for. That whether the kids know it or not, they've actually been using. I've always said for years, ceramics in particular, but art in general, makes science sexy. You know, it is one of the best ways to teach science and math to kids because we're not giving it to them as problems and equations. We're giving it to them as problems and equations, which they can intrinsically understand ever since they were children working with Play-Doh. They respond to this, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, I've taught you something. I just have to tell, oh, by the way, you're using centrifugal force on a wheel. You're using geometry when you're building a box. Oh, look, this is all proportion and fractions. I've got thermodynamics. I've got combustion theory. I've got glaze chemistry. We're teaching them this every day. These tools let us do that, so we have to keep using them. So for posterity, that's what I have to say.
Well, Dave, I want to thank you for just a fantastic presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
And explanation. And this is going to be the end of this video.